We go for launch.
5,
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4,
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3,
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2,
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
What is the secret of Soylent Green? New York City, in the year 2022. Nothing runs anymore. Nothing works. But the people are the same. And the people will do anything to get what they need.
This is the police.
What they need most is Soylent Green.
The supply of Soylent Green has been exhausted. Return to your home.
What is the secret of Soylent Green? Detective Sergeant Thorne. He has a 2-year backlog of unsolved murders. Now he's on a case that must be solved. Saul Roth, Thorne's private library.
Hey, Saul.
A living book in a world without books.
Have some pencils, courtesy of your next assignment. William R. Simonson.
Simonson. He was the first to learn the secret of Soylent Green.
They told me to say that they were sorry, but that you had become unreliable.
Saul Roth was the next to know.
How do we come to this?
And he chose to die rather than reveal the secret of Soylent Green. What is the secret of Soylent Green?
Why did you set up Simonson?
I didn't.
Cheryl.
See your hands.
Officially, she's furniture. She comes with the apartment. She belongs to the tenant.
How many times you been in trouble with the police, Cheryl?
Never.
Can't hear you.
Never.
Captain Hatcher. First, he wanted this case solved.
Simonson. What do you say?
It was an assassination.
Now, he just wants it
Who
closed.
bought you? High and hot, and they want this case closed permanently. Their way. Now, you sign this.
You sign it!
Thorne refuses to close the Simonson case.
Just do what you have to do. Where did you go with Simonson?
He took me to church.
Church.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 6 months since my last confession.
Charlton Heston, Edward G. Robinson, Chuck Connors, Lee Taylor Young, Brock Peters, Paula Kelly, and Joseph Cotton fight for survival and try to solve the most bizarre riddle ever to face mankind. The search for the secret of Soylent Green. You will find out why Soylent Green means life. You will find out why Soylent Green means death.
We gotta stop him!
What is the secret of Soylent Green?
Please!
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And welcome back to Planet 8. On this episode, your intrepid crew is going to be taking a deep dive into the dystopian futuristic dystopian film, Soylent Green. Straight away, let's kick it up to the satellite. Walker, what have you got for us?
Well, Larry, Bob, I think this has been sort of a long time coming. We've talked about Charlton Heston's other dystopian films, Chuck Heston. So he had sort of this cycle going in the 70s, right?
Right.
He did Planet of the Apes in 68, which definitely is a dystopian film. We talked a while back about Omega Man, which was his version of I Am Legend, and another great dystopian movie from him, which was 71. And so now we get to his trifecta of Soylent Green in 73. And so for a little background on what was going on at this time, and I will look at my notes because I am a cheater. I look at notes. So to understand kind of what's happening at that time, one of the big concerns was overpopulation. People were really concerned that there were going to be too many people. There was going to be famines. We're going to run out of food. And it was just going to be like the end of the world. And there was actually this book written in 1968 called The Population Bomb. It was written by Paul and Ann Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich was a Stanford professor. And so he predicted, based off of trends that he was seeing, that there would be overpopulation. And his book talked about, all these controls that should be put in place. So it was a little bit maybe fascistic. He had all these ideas about, sterilization and controlling the number of children people could have and all these kind of things, which I think would definitely be seen as over the top by most people nowadays. And I think there was a pretty strong reaction to this book, even back in the late 60s and early 70s. So, people were concerned about overpopulation. And one of the people concerned about overpopulation was Charlton Heston. And so I have a copy of his autobiography, which is a huge honking book. And I'll tell you, it's very interesting.
He lived a huge honking life.
He really did. And to digress just a little bit, if you have any interest in this man at all, I would recommend picking up his book, which is called In the Arena. I have to say his at least his political journey was very similar to my parents', which I thought was interesting. He started off early in his life, early in his career, being fairly liberal. He was president of the Screen Actors Guild, like in the 60s. He marched in a lot of civil rights protests and was considered rather liberal. I know this is probably shocking to a lot of people because I think the image of him is as a staunch conservative and gun rights supporter. And that's sort of the journey he made in his life, was going from this sort of more liberal background to a very conservative background. And it's interesting to read his thoughts on this. And my parents sort of did the same thing. They were Kennedy supporters and then wound up being like Reaganites. So for me, it was kind of interesting read. But he does talk about Soylent Green, and he does talk about why he wanted to make this movie. Got to take the glasses off for this. So he says in his book so he was out making Call of the Wild, and then he found out that a producer he worked with, Walter Seltzer, had taken a novel I'd wanted to film for a long time and sold MGM on it. The novel was called Make Room, set in New York in 2022, egads, when the city's population had exploded to 47 million people. Since I strongly believe that overpopulation is by far the gravest problem the world faces, this would be my only message movie. So he considered Soylent Green a message movie that he was making to make a point. He would go on to say that he was very proud of the film and delighted by its success. He says, still, I think the central reason why it turned out so well and that multitudes came to see the film was Edward G. Robinson. Casting him was my idea, probably the most important contribution I made to the picture. So he was very focused on this idea of overpopulation, very concerned about it. And that was why he wanted to make this book into a movie. Now, I did go on and find online an article that was part of a book, a collection of essays by different authors. And there was an essay in there by Harry Harrison, who was the author of Make Room, the basis of Soylent Green. And he wrote an essay called Cannibalized Novel Becomes Soylent Green. And so he was a little bit less than thrilled with the version of the movie that came from his book. Some of the things he had to say in there was that, that Heston and Walter Seltzer had been trying to make this book of his into a movie for years. And that one of the things that they had to do was add this idea of cannibalism to it in order to get the producers to go with it. So the story itself did not have the Soylent Green crackers. It didn't have any element of cannibalism, but it was about overpopulation.
Yeah, we should probably get that spoiler out of the way early.
I just sort of assume that people should know this by now. There were so many articles that came out last year because 2022 was the year that the film was set in. And I think I probably read half a dozen articles about, are we in Soylent Green? Is Soylent Green predicting the future or predicting now? So yes, of course, Soylent Green is
people.
Right. So yeah, Harrison was a little bit disappointed with that. He seemed to feel like it was a sensationalistic element that was added to his story.
But that's what people remember the most.
Well, yeah, exactly. Oh. So I think without that, it would never have been made. He did say he thought the production, the acting, and everything was extremely professional. He also really appreciated the opening montage scene, which was made by a guy named Chuck Braverman. But he said that, it was not, he hated the script because of that inclusion. And there was a lot of other things that he thought were overly simplified in it. But I think one of the things we can say about the film, okay, the overpopulation thing didn't happen, but the idea of climate change, they talk about a heat wave all year long, the greenhouse effect. I'm sure there's people out there who would disagree, but I think we're seeing a lot of climate effects now that we haven't seen in the past. Another thing is politics and big business. And we saw how the Soylent Corporation was kind of controlling a lot of what was happening with the political figures. The governor was in on this whole thing with Soylent and sort of that weird, not military industrial complex that we were warned of, but sort of this weird political and industrial complex. And then also the police and the extreme militarism of the police with the scoops and everything, right? That was, sort of, we've seen a lot, especially in the last few years, we've seen a lot of riots and things happen. So that was a little bit, there were a lot of things in this that sort of struck home with me, especially after going through the last few years and all the things we've had to see, live through, etc. The widening gap between the haves and have-nots and stuff. So anyway, I just kind of throw that out there. And if you guys want to discuss some of the plot points, I think we can
go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, it's kind of amazing, even though it's kind of a simple film and it's from way back when, but just the things that stick with you, not only the whole Soylent Green is people thing, but I mean, when I see crowds of people rioting on TV or something, first thing I think of is, where's the steam shovels? Where's the scoops? Get them out, But yeah, no, I think the big thing about this film is the fact you have Charlton Heston, you've got another Charlton, you got like Chuck Connors.
Connors, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have Edward G. Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, Whit Bissell. I mean, you have like an amazing cast in this movie. And they all do a great job with their characters and the acting. And it's like it could be a pretty silly concept if the actors can't pull it off seriously enough to get that message across.
I think of the three dystopian films Karen mentioned, this is the one that had the least hope for me.
Yes.
It ends in a very on a bad note, and look, with having gone through, and I noticed in some of these scoop scenes or the outdoor scenes, people are wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
So it led me to believe, was it an air quality thing? Was there some form of a pandemic?
And if you live near San Francisco, I mean, there's images in this movie of people just sleeping on the streets, sleeping on stairwells, sleeping, like side to side,
exactly,
totally overcrowded.
Yeah.
And if you go down to downtown San Francisco these days,
And I think one of the universal plots, not just in this film, but even in some of today's films, is the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And it's a very uncomfortable, I love the film, but it's very uncomfortable, some of the conversations that these people are having between the haves and the have-nots. The guy is killed, and Charlton Heston goes in there as a police officer and is kind of taking like food and like a pencil and things that Edward G. Robinson and he are roommates, that he wanted to share with him, and the whole thing with the corporation lying and saying, oh yeah, this is from the sea. The Soylent company, the Soylent Green product, the wafers, it's algae. And unfortunately, we come to find out that was not the case, that the seas are actually dying.
Right.
Although in the novel, I think Soylent Green, it wasn't a wafer, it was like a steak, right? And it was made from soy and plankton.
It was based, yeah. So there was no people.
That kind of foretold the whole Impossible Burger thing and all that.
It's kind of interesting because Heston's character is not his typical, well, I guess in these, you think about all three of these movies, he's not your typical Dudley Do-Right, good, do-gooder, right?
Right.
And in this one, he's probably sort of the least recognizable as a hero, because as you say, Larry, like when he goes to investigate that murder, he pilfers like everything he can get, right? And what's really sad is when he brings it home to Saul at one point, after, here's pencils, here's paper, and then you realize, oh, there's no trees left, that's why they don't have any paper. And then I think he pulls out the steak, and then Saul just starts sobbing.
Yeah.
And it really, it's funny. I've seen this film so many times, but I did have a different reaction this time when I saw it. And I thought, yeah, if you could not get your hands on these things, and you knew that they probably were, a lot of them, gone for good, you would have that kind of reaction, and to be there saying, my God, what have we done to ourselves?
And Saul had a line, I can't quote it exactly, but what have we become?
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, Walker, it really hit me different, this time. And the simple thing, the simple act of saying, I love you, Saul. It was so meaningful, because we have nothing, but we still have each other. And I think for me, the pivot of Heston becoming the hero is when Saul says, Soylent Green, whispers to him, it's people, and you have to tell them. You have to. And that's when he's like, okay, this is for Saul.
Yeah.
I think that,
and when he goes in and he sees all the images, right? When Saul has decided, I've had enough, I can't live with this anymore, this knowledge, and he goes to the euthanasia center. Yeah. Boy, that is a hard one too. and like Bob mentioned, all the great actors, right? This could have been really like a B grade movie with bad actors, but these actors really elevate the material. And that scene really hit me this time around, maybe because I'm getting older, maybe because we've lived through a lot of crap the last few years. But that scene between the two of them, and you're right, Larry, that's when Thorne, Heston's character, has this change where he has to be more than just looking out for himself.
Well, I mean, that scene with Edgar G. Robinson, I read in one place that his wife could not be there when they were shooting that scene because he had stomach cancer. In fact, he passed away like, a week, 10 days, something like that.
Right.
That was the last scene he ever shot. And, it was a scene of his death. So even Charlton Heston said it was the most emotional scene he had ever shot. And he did not know at the time that Edgar G. Robinson was suffering from stomach cancer.
Right.
But he knew that he could feel there was something going on and there was something there. And the emotions that both actors put forth in that scene is pretty heavy.
It is.
It is moving. I have to admit, I got a little bit misty during that sequence, which hadn't happened before.
Of course, I cried.
The man tears were flowing.
And I haven't seen this for a number of years. It was Dick Van Patten was the guy that escorted
the attendant.
Yes, I was like, hey.
And it's funny because I don't know if Dick Van Patten was ever young. This was, quote, a young Dick Van Patten.
My niece Kayla, she goes through like photos and yearbook, and she's like, Pumbaa, you've always looked the same. I'm like, hey.
That's a good catch. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Oh God, her name evades me. The book club people, to Paul.
Well, so you're thinking of the woman who played
Powell, sorry, yeah.
Celia Lovsky.
Thank you.
Celia Lovsky. Yes, I noticed a lot of Star Trek people in this movie.
Yes.
I was surprised because I've only really seen her in Amok Time, Star Trek. And the accent that she has in there is a really cool accent, really. And I didn't know that was her actual real accent because she talks the exact same way in this movie that she did in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently Vulcans sound like Austrians, I guess. So, who knew, right?
Well,
Does that mean Arnold has a Vulcan accent? Wouldn't it be great to put the ears on Arnold and live long and prosper?
Yeah.
But they also had, I think, Larry, before we started recording, you mentioned Brock Peters.
Brock Peters, that's right. He was in a number of Star Trek films and television series.
Yeah, he was Sisko's dad.
Famously Sisko's dad.
Right. So
one of the conspirators in the undiscovered country.
He was Admiral. Yeah.
And who did you mention, Karen? There was another E pluribus.
So Roy Jensen played Donovan. He was one of Governor Santini's aides / I think assassins. And I kept looking at him, and I was like, I recognize this guy. He was Cloud William from the Omega Glory in classic Trek. He did the E Plebnista.
And I totally missed that.
So yeah, that was interesting. I was like, oh wow, I don't think I've seen this guy in anything else. He's probably been in a lot of Westerns and other stuff from that time. Yeah. But I kept looking at him and I was like, who is this? So yeah,
I'm
Cloud
sure
William.
As I binge my way through the Invaders, I'm sure he's probably in there somewhere.
Everybody is in the Invaders. Okay, this is a little side journey. Bob and I have both been watching the old Quinn Martin Invaders. And yes, Like, it's worth watching just to see the guest stars, because it's like everybody from the late 60s, early 70s on TV.
Well, I watched one yesterday, and William Wyndham was in there.
Yep, I saw William Wyndham as like the Air Force Base guy. Yeah. And young Dabney Coleman is also popping up. Weird, no facial hair. Weird. So yeah, just about everybody winds up on the Invaders. It's
No
really
facial hair. He looked naked then.
He looked very baby-faced. Probably why he grew the facial hair.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but it's worth watching just for that. But it's a cool show, I have to say. Maybe we'll convince Larry to.
Oh, the commander's going to have to start catching up. Well, now that Halloween's over and our binging of different horror franchises is over here in the house, we can start fitting in some Invaders.
Invaders. It's a good show. And it has a small number of episodes.
It's a Quinn Martin production. How could it be bad?
I know.
In color.
Yeah.
Invaders in color.
Hey, getting back to sorry, Karen, go ahead.
No, you had something you were going to bring up.
I was just going to say, I mentioned before it was the most dystopian of the films. I don't remember feeling as uncomfortable as I did watching this. I remember Chuck Connors as a heavy because my grandmother loved The Rifleman, so we'd always watch, and as a kid, hey, Paul, yeah, but it was kind of like watching David Tennant play the heavy in Jessica Jones. It just felt uncomfortable watching someone who you've always seen as a hero play the heavy, or Harrison Ford in What Lies Beneath. It just kind of like throws you off.
I couldn't root against him. In fact, I was kind of rooting for him when he's fighting with Charlton Heston.
Bob.
Yeah.
Before I forget too, and you'll have to forgive me, I should have wrote down the name of the actress who played the let's say girlfriend of Charlton Heston. She was one of the only cast members, from what I read, that survived to 2022.
Lee Taylor Young.
So yeah, what did she think of 2022? I don't know.
You have to
She
contact
kind of
her.
left acting, and she was off she was into politics, and she was into meditation and all these different.
Well, that Soylent Green scared the poop out of her. She was trying to avoid,
Who knows? That's another interesting thing, and I wish I could find this. Obviously, women did not fare well in the world of Soylent Green.
I know that was another hard thing to. Yeah.
And so years ago, I had read an article, which was an interview with Heston from around the time the movie was made. And I guess a lot of feminists of the time had complained about that. And I remember in this interview him kind of saying, look, if Gloria Steinem thinks women are going to do well if we have a apocalyptic thing happen, she's sadly mistaken. I could not find this article to save my life. I feel like that's kind of admitting my Google skills have failed me, but I looked everywhere, Internet Archive everywhere, and I couldn't turn it up. But I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider, because I do think that when things start going downhill, certain groups, their rights start getting trampled on pretty quick. I don't know that I believe when women wind up being like attached to an apartment, like, they called them furniture and everything. Is that possible? Well, almost anything is possible, I suppose. But yeah, I could imagine a future where a lot of the, if things go downhill economically, a lot of the progress women have made could go downhill. And you look at a lot of countries that are developing or, very economically disadvantaged, women don't have a lot of rights. So
you're probably right, unfortunately. And what kind of struck me too is, a little while ago, Dianne Feinstein passed away, and it turns out that she was one of the first congressional women to be in the Senate, and that's like
in your
modern history. That's
Yeah.
not like 50 years or 100 years ago. So yeah, it was an uncomfortable, not to digress too much, but Jasmine, we were watching the original MASH film, and the way that they treated Hot Lips, she was like, that's terrible, that's horrible. And unfortunately, it's just a sign of the times. And even though this was supposed to take place in the future, it still was, that type of dystopian hopelessness, so much hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's also the complaint that some people have on the early Bond films. The way that Connery treated the women in those.
Well, and again, not to take away from Soylent Green, but there's this wonderful 3-part series on Netflix about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah.
The first part is about his bodybuilding. The second part is about his acting, and the third part is his political career. And he's very honest in the successes and the mistakes of his life. And at one point, I don't know if it was his first term or second term, I don't remember, running for governor. Probably the first, because days before the election,
I think it was the first.
It had to be the first, because they put an article out saying so and so says you touched her inappropriately, and there were some other women who made the same claim, and he his advisors started advising him what to do, what to say, and he says no. He says, look, it was the 70s. Did I touch this woman inappropriately? I did, and for that I'm sorry. Did I smoke dope? Marijuana back in the 70s? Yeah, I did. A lot of people did. And I'm having this conversation with my mother, and she's like, oh, yeah, I had a joint back in the 70s. I'm like, what? But, yeah, that being said, you get the idea that, hey, not to make excuses. It wasn't right then, and it's not right now, but he fessed up to it and apologized.
That's good. And I think people have trouble putting things into context, right? Not that anything was ever appropriate back whenever, but the issue is that a lot of this stuff was just accepted. Sexism was there and it was accepted, and it was very standard. And that's not saying that was a good thing.
Right.
But that was the way people thought about things, and so you have to be able to understand that.
Everything, whether it's like movies or music or TV shows, it's all a product of its time.
Right.
I was going to say the same thing, Bob. And even though they try to say, well, it's 50 years in the future, it's still being made in the 70s, right, where the culture is what it is.
That time.
Well, it's interesting because when Disney first released like the complete like Mickey Mouse box set or whatever, and there's some stuff that happens in some of those early Mickey Mouse cartoons that's pretty heavy stuff, a lot of smoking and everything else. And luckily they didn't edit it, they didn't blur it out, they didn't eliminate they actually had an explanation. This is a product of its times, and this has happened back then. And so it's almost like an educational tool. Yeah. It's like, they say you're cursed to repeat your mistakes if you don't acknowledge them.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, you watch these old shows and stuff, it's like, well, yeah, that's how it was back then. And it's not the way it is now, or shouldn't be, but
right.
This is a learning experience rather than,
and look, I love Star Trek. Exactly. We all love Star Trek, but we know sure as heck no one's going to be wearing those short skirts, once we start traversing galaxies. But it was the 60s. That's, they did their best to say, right. Or those fans of, go ahead.
I was going to say, what makes me laugh nowadays is when I go to watch a show on Netflix or some other streaming channel, and they put a little warning up in the top and it says warning smoking.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm just like, okay, I think I'm okay. I can handle it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it cracks me up because I look at those little things in the corner and I'll say, sex, violence, nudity, and adult situations or whatever. And I'll go, hey, this one's got it all.
This is going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a warning or an advertisement?
It's kind of funny. Well, if they did that for the invaders, it'd be like a smoking one every episode because those people are smoking constantly. That's crazy. It reminds me of when people would come over to visit my folks and they'd all sit around the dining table and like there'd just be this haze. You couldn't even see their heads.
I mean, my parents didn't smoke, but they had ashtrays all over the place. People would come over, they would.
Yeah.
It's the way it was. Even on an airplane, you could smoke on a plane.
Yeah, that's
now
weird.
you can't. So
Think about that now. It seems odd.
But getting back to Soylent Green, Saul finds out the truth, and Saul, those books that he got about the Soylent, the studies for the seaweed in the oceans and stuff like that, and Revelation, and talks to the book club people, not the book club people, but the
exchange.
The exchange. That's what it was. The exchange. And
the few smart people left in the world.
It not to make light of the situation because it was a very poignant scene, but it's just Saul saying, "I'm out.
Yep.
I'm done.
Couldn't take it no more."
No.
Did you notice too? This is kind of a sidebar, but because paper was so limited, all the writing they did were like on those little erase sheets. They had plastic stencils, and they had the little. I
would have saved mine from when I was a kid if I knew that.
I don't remember, what did we call those little things?
I was trying to think what the name of those things were.
Was it like an Etch-a-Sketch or something? Or
it had the wax backing behind it, and it had the little plastic
gray
sheet.
sheet and then the sheet.
And I thought on one hand that could be like considered like really corny, but on the other hand it was like, well, if you didn't, I mean, nowadays they would have just had like iPods or something. If they do a new version of this, it would be like an iPad or something, a tablet. I mean, but yeah, it was funny. They were using the little sheets.
Or look, if there's a power crisis, there might not be many electronics.
That's true.
Depending on how far in the future they go. I mean, the sketch artist for Criminals, they were using the little magnet thing with those shaving stuff.
That would be funny.
In that interview I watched with Charlton Heston, he was pointing out the fact that Saul was one of the few people that could read or write. He was a few people who were literate, and he said, and I didn't catch this in the movie, but he said that those people were referred to as books. The books.
Yeah. I read that too.
But like I said, I didn't see it in the movie, but he mentioned it. And so that's why he grabbed in the pencil and grabbed in the paper and
I had read real quickly that the first video game was introduced in this film, that stand-up console that they had. It was like Asteroids or something similar.
It looked a lot like Asteroids. Yeah.
I was like, well, that's interesting. But go ahead, Walker. Sorry.
It was a little confusing because at one point I don't know if I watched the interview or read it, but the same thing as you guys, where he was saying, well, Saul could read and write, but Thorne is writing down notes when he's talking to people. So at least he has some capability, but maybe it's just that his education is limited and probably the masses can't read or write at all. Saul at one point says, I was a professor.
Mm-hmm.
So he was obviously educated before things really completely fell apart. He must
Thorne or Heston, he could have picked it up from Saul. I mean,
that's true too.
It could have, yeah.
He was a professor, he could have taught him.
Interesting factoid I came across was that this is one of the last motion pictures that was filmed on the MGM lot.
Oh, yeah.
And that the street scenes were kind of in disrepair, which kind of worked for the production, because it was a dystopian future. But yeah, this if not the last, it was one of the last films that were shot on that lot.
A few lasts. So the last on the lot, and the last of Edward G. Robinson.
Last of Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think he almost became Dr. Zaius. If he had been able to handle the makeup, he could have been Dr. Zaius.
Well, and they were saying Heston, I think, first, started working with him when he was attached to Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same thing. He just couldn't handle, the makeup or the scheduling or whatever. And he just, he backed out.
Actually, Edgar G. Robinson and Charlton Heston worked together in the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Right. And then when he brought him in to try out to try the makeup for Planet of the Apes, and Edward G. Robinson, I guess, also had heart issues. And being in all that makeup kind of agitated him, and he was like, it's no good for my heart. I don't want to do it. I got to,
I think he and Heston kind of remained friends. And in that interview I saw, Charlton Heston said that he lived just like blocks away from him down in the canyon where he lived, and had an amazing art collection, he said. They weren't like best of friends, but they had kept in touch. And
yeah, I got a sense from reading his autobiography that he was really, really pleased to be able to work with Edward G. Robinson again, and he really respected him. So for him, this was a great one for him, because he got to make his movie about overpopulation, which was really important to him, and he got to work with one of his favorite actors to work with. So, and it did pretty well, so.
Oh, absolutely. You guys know the director for this film was the son of Fleischer.
Was it the cartoon Fleischer?
Yes, it was a cartoon Fleischer.
I didn't know that. Okay.
That was his father. Tidbit. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Right, Richard
Fleischer. He also directed like Fantastic Voyage and
yes,
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and
so he has a very like fantasy sci-fi kind of
good pedigree
in the genre.
Indeed.
So
now, how do you guys think this falls into other dystopian films of the time, like Westworld, Logan's Run?
Right.
What did you think? I thought this was more realistic, especially again after the pandemic, where there's shortages on baby formula,
toilet paper,
shortages on medication, on what?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Do you remember when we couldn't get toilet paper? Geez.
My mother texted me and says, "There's no toilet paper shortage, son." I'm like, "What are you talking about, Mother?" "I found red, yellow." I said, "Mom, that's streaming from the party store. That's not." She said, well,
works for both, right?
Hey, this is a woman back in North Dakota. They would use the Sears catalog as toilet paper because it was so soft. I'm like,
my parents did that too. God bless them.
Hey. Can't say that mine did, but but no, I mean, they have the scene too where Tuesday is Soylent Green Day, and the Soylent Green comes out, and people are just hoarding and crowding and stampeding to get whatever Soylent Green they can. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely a look into the future, because that's kind of, every Christmas season or whatever.
That reminded me of when I went to one of the stores here back in 2020, and people went nutso grabbing bottles of water off a pallet, trying to get hand sanitizer, toilet paper, any stuff like that. People were just pushing
Clorox wipes, let alone Clorox, Lysol.
Right. So I do feel like this feeling that we've maybe talked about how this movie hit us differently. And some people might say, "Oh, you're exaggerating." Well, to each his own, right? Some people, everybody has a different experience of the last few years, but
Sure.
it definitely felt different for me seeing it this time because, like, yeah, there's some things that have happened that made me think differently about the film.
Well, a lot of it is like the effects of the media. Like they'll go on the news and say there's a shortage of toilet paper, and then suddenly everybody crowds the stores. They're all buying toilet paper, and yes, now there's a shortage of toilet paper.
Right, and it's
what I want to know is where's all the damn toilet paper that they hoarded in their garages?
garage.
I mean,
it's sort of a chicken and the
go
egg
through that
thing.
stuff like really quick sometimes.
But to get back to your thing about where does this fit in the sort of pantheon of 70s dystopian films, I think it's a really good film. It is to me, though, because like you said, it's the most realistic feeling, because like something like Logan's Run, it's like that's a fun dystopia. It's glitzy
more
and
of a fantasy,
which was also by the same director.
Oh, interesting. And MGM as well.
Good point.
That's interesting. Or then like something.
It's definitely a dour look at the future. It's definitely not.
Right.
I think it was more realistic. You had a corporation, you had a company, you had the police department, you had politicians. You know, there was a lot of overpopulation. There were a lot of things that kind of hit home that maybe aren't happening now, or maybe a piece of it happened up to this point or back then or whatever. And that's what just kind of, you know, it was more of a cautionary tale, I think.
Well, yeah. And even if Heston's 3, it's the least fun dystopia, because if I'm an Omega Man, this is getting back to our Road to Apocalypse.
I want to do another one of those.
Which, yes, we need to do another one, because that was
warm up the Dragon Mobile, Bob.
But like if you're an Omega Man, it's a little depressing because he's alone for a while, right? So the loneliness thing. But he has liquor. He's got a cool place. He's set up pretty good. He drives whatever car he wants. He's shooting, you know, family members. It's like that's not.
You can watch Woodstock every day of his life.
Exactly, you know, or you may want to shoot yourself after a while. Logan's Run isn't that bad. What else have we got? Like Silent Running. Silent Running is kind of sad, but
Silent
it's in
Running
outer space.
is sad. I think Westworld was kind of sad, but kind of fun because of the robots.
But is it really dystopian, or is it just, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it's really. I think it's just futuristic. It's not really dystopian.
Yeah.
Damnation Alley.
Damnation Alley is pretty bad. The big cockroaches and stuff.
Death Race 2000.
You get to run over people.
Frankenstein. That's features Friday night.
So this one is pretty bleak.
It is.
And there's too many similarities to things that
you know, did he live or did he die? His bloody hand was up. You got to tell them it's people. And there's Brock Peterson. I'll tell him. But did he?
Right. Will anything change? And this is the thing. Those people are so apathetic. If you told them Soylent Green is made of people, are they going to do anything, or are they just going to go?
Well, is there anything they can do?
Hold the people accountable that brought us to that point, or you know, that are running the Soylent
and whatever. You're scratching to get by. How are you going to suddenly fight the man and, you know, go up against the government?
If Caesar and the apes could have an uprising.
I mean, this movie definitely is a precursor to the 1%.
Yeah.
1% running everything.
And that's just leads to the whole like harshness of the film. You know, there's no, but I will say one of the things I appreciate, there's no sequel. You know, this is its own, and we've talked about before, the Matrix didn't need any of the sequels. It was itself, its own. Soylent Green had a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's unapologetic, and you can do with it what you like.
Son of Soylent Green.
So bravo. There are other films like Planet of the Apes that need umpteen sequels.
Milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah. I wonder if they ever approached Heston and like, hey, Charles, let's do a sequel.
From what I've seen and read, I don't know if it really made all that much money. I mean, the box office, it only did like 35 million or something at the box office.
Hmm.
And
it was respectable.
I couldn't see what the budget was.
Hmm.
Yet figure, I don't know what budget's
probably didn't do the business that Apes did, so they wanted to.
He had other things to go on to.
Well, yeah, I think he made his statement. And also one of the things he likes his characters to die in his movies, it's very dramatic. So he didn't want to come back. I don't know if Thorne died. I think you could probably, it's a 50-50 shot, but yeah, he said what he wanted to say and
did what he had to do.
Off he went to the next movie, right?
I'm coming to join you, Saul.
I just
earthquake and sense around.
I kind of hope nobody tries to do a remake of this film. I could see somebody trying to do it, but the problem is everybody knows the punchline now, so they'd have to change it somehow, and then they'd probably change it in a really stupid way. So,
well, yes and no. They did that remake of Psycho scene for scene, and it was in color, and that just So let's hope this is never remade. Any last thoughts?
I don't know if they would want to remake it, though. I mean, it's like, it seems like Hollywood always wants movies that are hopeful.
Well, they could always change the end.
I don't know if they could.
Yeah, they could always. Turns out that Soylent Green was bacon, so.
That was Soylent Brown.
Saul would find the notes for a machine that would fix the atmosphere and save the world.
Yeah, there you go. It could happen. Look, with all the streaming channels now, who knows? Let's hope not, though.
They'd make a mini series out of it, and it would take him like 2 years to find out Soylent Green was people.
Oi. Any last thoughts? Any last comments before we vacate the apartment or the condo? And
it's a good movie. It's worth a watch now and then.
Definitely.
It's not something I'll probably never get to like 10, 12 views of it, but I've seen it maybe 3-4 times. I did see it in the theater when it came out. The Hillsdale Cinema in San Mateo.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was going to all those Charlton Heston movies back then, all Planet of the Apes and Earthquake and all of them. I went and saw just about all of them in the theater. He was big back then, big action star.
He was.
And people say a lot of negative things about Charlton Heston's acting ability, but I look at him as like sort of an archetype. And I don't expect especially nuanced acting from him. I just want him to sort of, deliver the goods. And I think he does fine. And I actually thought he was pretty good in this. Like, I thought maybe having somebody of Edward G. Robinson's caliber kind of brought him up too, he did a really good job in it. So yeah, I think of the, if you wanted to compare, Planet of the Apes is in its own category, but if you wanted to compare Soylent Green and Omega Man, I enjoy Omega Man more because it's just a big action movie and it's fun, but I think he did a better acting job probably in Soylent Green,
Yeah.
I feel that way with like Alien and Aliens. One is a horror movie and one is a action adventure movie. Mm-hmm. And
yin and yang, and stop it there.
Yeah, and Sigourney Weaver, I love her in both. So yeah, I understand your point about Mr. Heston and the
Of
films
course,
he's
the most
been in.
brilliant thing he ever did was that sketch on Saturday Night Live, where he was, I don't remember the name of the character, but he had some sort of mental deficiency and was talking about murdering somebody with a shovel and kept calling everybody captain.
Let me tell you something, Captain.
Looking up
Adam
on
Sandler.
Chris there.
The fact that he was just game to do that was like so good, so good.
Yeah, that is a classic. Well, my friends, this was another fun adventure into dystopian cinema. Hopefully we can get Bob to warm up the Dragonmobile. Like I say, we'll go traveling through some of these dystopian films.
I'm excited. We should do it again.
In the garage, ready to go.
Well, there you go. This is the point where we talk about what we're watching, items that have come into our possession recently, what we're planning on watching, things that we're going to do. Straight away, let's kick it over to Bob. He's got some news to share with you.
Oh, there's just like so much going on right now.
And real quickly, those of you watching on YouTube, and we hope you are, you would have seen portions of the Charlton Heston book. You'll see the cool green shirt that Bob is sporting.
Planet 8.
Planet 8. And any paraphernalia that Bob may share, and or I and Karen. Take it away, Chief. Sorry about that.
I have no paraphernalia this time around, but
shocking.
I know. But I do have some cool things going on.
Hit us.
As I've mentioned on previous episodes, there is a new Godzilla movie coming out. Godzilla -1. It premiered in Japan November 1st. It's coming to America December 1st, although they're going to have a little preview on November 29th. And on this Friday, which is what is today? We're recording today on the 6th or something, or
is it the 11th?
So on this coming Friday, Keith Aiken and I will be going down to LA for the red carpet premiere of Godzilla -1. The director will be there. This is being put on by Toho. So they invited us through Sci-Fi Japan to be down there. And so yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll take a little video, I'll take some photos, and we'll share them on the podcast. And we'll see, see who else. I'm sure there's going to be other people, directors, whatever, that just happen to show up. I mean, when we went to the premiere of Godzilla King of the Monsters, Gareth Edwards was there because he had made Godzilla 2014. So Keith and I ran into him. We had a nice little chat with him, took a picture with him and everything. Nice guy. So yeah, I mean, who knows who will show up on this thing. And then also via Sci-Fi Japan, we were able to get the first 8 episodes of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, which is the Godzilla series coming up on Apple TV Plus. It starts on November 15th, and we've had it since mid-October. But I've watched up through episode 8. Really good. I think people that complain about the characters of some of these legendary films, they'll dig this definitely. Stars Kurt Russell, who we all know and love. It also stars his son Wyatt Russell. And the cool thing is the story takes place, it goes back and forth from 1955 when Monarch is starting, and then it goes into 2015, a year after Godzilla's first appearance in San Francisco. So Kurt and Wyatt are playing the exact same character. Wyatt plays him in his younger days, and Kurt plays him in his present older days. So it works really well. The two of them definitely have the same acting style. So it's very, Very cool. I definitely recommend it. Some cool monsters and cool action scenes. And so it's a good one. And
very cool.
Other than that, yeah, I've been what have we been binging? We watched Gen V, which is a spinoff from The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And takes place at a university for supers. And Vought, that made the drug that turns people into supers, they have a laboratory down underneath the college with some nefarious intent. So it's definitely something to check out. It was actually really good. If you like The Boys, you'll love this. There's even a cameo in there of Soldier Boy. Of course, is played by
Jensen Ackles.
That's right. Jensen Ackles, who played Dean in Supernatural. So he's in there for a bit. Homelander is actually in it for a little bit.
Ooh, scary.
So yeah, no, that's good. And we just started binging the 3rd season of Lupin on Netflix. And this is not like Lupin the Third cartoon, whatever. This is live action, a French series. It follows this character, Hassan Diop. And he grew up reading the Lupin novels. And so he basically does all these jewel heists and all these different things and models himself and his heists after the classic Lupin stories. And
nice.
So it's very, very entertaining. So
very cool.
Pretty much what we have been doing.
Excellent. Walker, what do you got for us?
Well, I don't have anything nearly exciting as going to the red carpet premiere.
You've got
I realized
book.
You got the book.
Oh, well, yeah, I got the Charlton Heston book. So
the big book.
It's almost 600. He has a lot to say, this man. He lived a life. The interesting thing is the back cover of this edition, which you can't really see because I've got my background on. It's a picture of him from Ben-Hur.
Oh, nice.
But then the front cover is him somewhat older with a rifle over his shoulder. So I don't know what sort of statement. I feel like there's a statement there. I'm not sure really what to say about that.
You'd have to pry that from his cold dead.
It was funny. I found this book last year at a bookstore. I'd been hoping to get it, but it was one of those things where I didn't want to order it. I didn't want it enough to go out and order it. I just kept looking around at different bookstores, and then it finally popped up. So, and luckily I had it for this podcast.
Nice.
Didn't want it enough to buy it, but.
Well, it's like there's certain things you want so much, you just go right out and you search Amazon or thrift books or whatever and say, I just order it, just give it to me. And then there's other stuff you're like, if it comes into my universe, then I will get it. So.
And the price is right.
And the price is right.
It shows up at Half Price Books.
Half Price is great. I love Half Price Books. And I feel like a dummy because Bob sent me a really cool Godzilla Fest shirt, and it's in the other room. Yes, that's the one. So
Larry is wearing it.
Folks who are not on YouTube, Larry is wearing the Godzilla Fest shirt, which is very colorful drawings of Godzilla and other characters, and it's a really cool shirt.
In front of the Castro Theater.
Mm.
And it's the Balboa Theater.
Balboa, sorry, my bad, Balboa.
And the artist that did that was Nick Pino. We'll be doing our shirt for the next Godzilla Fest.
Very nice.
Well, he did a very good job, so it's a very
sold fast. The shirts, we generally have shirts left over after the show. This shirt sold out halfway through the second day.
Wow.
Gone.
Well, thanks for sending me one, buddy. I appreciate it.
Well, my friends, we here at Mobile Command have been binging Goosebumps on Disney Plus. And it was pretty good, actually. It's 8 episodes. There's going to be a second season. They kind of lead up to stuff. They got some fun actors doing stuff. Those of you on YouTube, you saw the shirt Godzilla shirt, and I have a LP, long playing record, made of this thing called vinyl. Vinyl. The Bomb Boris band or group. This cover is by Shag, the artist. And
very nice.
It is a very cool collection.
UFO on the back.
Yeah, and skeletons. So how cool is that? I'm going to.
What type of music is this Bomboris?
Surf guitar.
The best music.
Yes, and they're pretty good too. I will say, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I don't have the setup that I used to, but I do have a nice little portable record player that I can hook up to my speaker. And and they gave me a digital download so I can listen to it on my phone too. So
There you go.
But there's something about vinyl that just has that quality. To surprise Bob and Karen, I reached out to the Fan Expo people. They do these it's kind of a Comic-Con. It's more so autographs, and then they'll sell like shirts and pillows, and there's fan groups.
Moscone or somewhere?
It's at the Moscone. It's later this month. I was able to get a press pass, which I didn't get one last year. They offered me a day. Apparently our Outer Limits episode is really convincing a lot of these organizations to no, just kidding. And with the little package, the email package they sent me, and they says, hey, if you want to schedule an interview, let us know. We're going to see who's available. Submit your request. So I submitted a request to interview Sean Astin, Bill Shatner, Katie Sackhoff, Ewan McGregor, and Mark Hamill.
Wow. Well,
so
we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I didn't expect to hear back from them, so that I heard back from them was, and they didn't commit to anything. They're like, we'll see what we can do. But it'll be exciting. I don't know that I can go all 3 days, but probably December 8th episode, we'll hear more about how that went. Bob, if we have a chance, can we throw some Halloween animatronic videos from your place and my place?
I have done one.
Okay.
I have it ready to go, so I will insert it in the episode.
I will send you mine. It's very short, but sweet.
Yeah, mine's about 4.5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
I just chose one song, like Spook Walk from the Moonrays, and put a bunch of images to it. So,
I got to up my game. I got to add music to mine. All right, kids.
Or just, just put a mic to your mouth and go, doo, 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 doo.
Maybe I'll put mine to Benny Hill. Anyway. Anything else you guys have before we sign off?
Well, like I say, maybe next episode I'll have some Godzilla goodies. And
that would be cool.
And what is the next episode, by the way?
It's our special Thanksgiving episode.
That's right.
About
Bob does not have to do any homework for it all.
Someone who is a legend.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, kids. Before we sign off, I just want to give thanks and acknowledgement to a dear friend of mine who I worked with for a number of years, almost a mentor. He was so passionate in our union, and was just a friend to all. Steve Howell, God rest his soul, 79 years young, passed away last week. Stevie, I miss you and appreciate you. And I'm sorry to end on a bum note, because maybe he was my Saul. No, see, that's
oh, okay. Well, here you go. I mean, there's another thank you we should put out now, and we don't put out quite enough, and that's to Project Pimento.
Oh,
Just use their song for our end theme.
You know,
episode.
Actually, Bob, I played their theme when I filmed my stuff on the portable speaker, so maybe I'll throw that on my Halloween. But yeah, Project Pimento, check them out. I think it's projectpimento.com. We had them on the Vlogspot page. I'm not sure if we have them here, but yeah, projectpimento.com. Tell them Planet 8.
Well, we should have them on an episode and talk to them a little bit.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them. That'll be fun.
After we get to Mark Hamill and
fingers crossed.
People dying to speak to us.
If I could at least get Mark Hamill to say, "This is Mark Hamill, you're listening to Planet 8 podcast," I'll be happy. if he wants to answer some questions, I'll be happy. Bill Shatner. I mean,
do it as the Joker.
Oh man. Okay, well, let's hope. But anyway, you all, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hey, look, click the like button. Click the subscribe button.
Please and thank you.
And comment. Yes, please and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate you guys. Stay safe. Take care. Until we meet again. Planet 8 signing off. Peace out.
a magic ball, and I will do a trick for you. Take a Halloween wish. Close your eyes very tight. When you open them up, the ball will take flight. And it's lovely.
I'm Jack Scallywag. I used to be the greatest pirate of the high seas. I did it all. I captured treasures and fought heavy ships.
I'm a little, anxious, if you know what I mean. Under years, I wonder where a guy in everyday Joe like myself.
Look at what we have here. Something for my good spell.
I can chew out. I've got to the heart business of my travel. We got a little ball playing and I had a pretty good time during that.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.